Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I'd like to talk about playtesting your games. And personally speaking for me, when I was first starting to make games, I thought this was very simple. I thought, hey, I'll just give someone a copy of my game, and if they say they liked it, good job me. If they say they didn't like it, bad job me, I need to make some fixes to improve it. And unfortunately, it's not that simple, it's more complicated than that. And I've developed a set of best practices that I use for playtesting my games. I'm going to share what those are with you, but keep in mind that this is one of those subjects where everyone approaches playtesting a little bit differently. But hopefully you can take a few things away from how I test my games, okay? So I'm going to start off with the very obvious first step of playtesting, and that is you should let the player play the game and step aside and say nothing, okay? If you ever catch yourself saying, oh no, that's not how you should play, this is how you should play, or oh no, don't go that way, go this way, or something like that where you're instructing the player, that's a key sign that your game is not clear enough or it's not communicating what it needs to be communicating to the player. So basically my rule of thumb is whatever I say to the player or whatever I want to say to the player to correct how he or she is playing, I need to go back to the drawing board and design my tutorial level or design whatever it is they're getting stuck on. I need to design it to be more clear and communicate these ideas in a better way. Basically, in an ideal world, you're trying to communicate to the player through your game just like you would be communicating to them in person if you were walking them through your game. That's how I look at it. And in general, I never trust direct feedback, and maybe that sounds weird to say. I know a lot of people at the end of their playtest sessions, they'll ask follow-up questions like, hey, did you like the game? What would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10? Would you buy this game? And I feel like that's always going to skew the answers positively, because people don't want to hurt your feelings. They know you're the guy that made the game. Maybe they think it's cool that they're talking to the designer of the game, okay? So I never really ask follow-up questions or trust direct feedback like that, because a lot of times people are just trying to be nice. So what I trust instead is these more gut reactions or gut responses that you'll see come up during the playtest session. And not everyone does these. Like if you're testing the game with a very shy or a very reserved person, you're not going to see him or her be like, oh yeah, yeah, or give expressions like that. But let me give you an example. I'll give a couple examples of good and bad gut reaction feedback that I've taken to the bank. So I've tested the current game I'm working on during a science fair activity that was geared towards young teenagers. And one person tested the game. She was, I believe, 13 or 14 years old, and her mom said, okay, I'll let you play this game. I'm going to go look at the other aspect or the other hall in the fair where this other thing's going on. And the kid played the game for 30 minutes to an hour, something like that. It was pretty close to an hour. And the parent came back and was like, all right, honey, it's time to go now. And the girl was like, oh no, I need to finish this level. I'm almost there. Let me stay a little longer. And then the mom will say, okay, I'll go check out something else. And then 30 minutes later, the mom comes back and she's like, no, I'm almost done with the game or whatever, right? She doesn't want to leave. And that to me is true, genuine, positive feedback, okay? It's no one's coming, I didn't try and get that reaction out of the girl. I didn't say, did you like playing my game or anything like that. It just naturally came by me observing her playing the game and her mom trying to take her away from it, right? Another example of bad gut feedback I've seen is, this was a year or so back when I was testing an early version of the game, and it was with a friend. Some people recommend you don't test with friends, but I have pretty honest friends that are gamers, so I usually go to a couple of them. And I was watching him play the game, and he kept dying over and over, and he was running into a problem, the same problem multiple times throughout this level. And every time he died, he would just be like, he'd give that, that basically means I'm not enjoying this at all, and this is very frustrating, okay? And of course, he didn't tell that to me. At the end, I was like, so what'd you think? And he was like, well, you know, it's a little hard, you know. But that I trusted that sigh more than more than the direct feedback, right? And I knew, based off that a lot of things need to be looked at, and I just remembered, okay, when did he have these negative reactions? And I thought, okay, they're actually he had those negative reactions all during the same sections, so maybe those sections need to be cut or looked at. Right, I kind of deduced for myself where the problem areas were by listening to and observing that gut reaction from people. And like I said, that this doesn't work for everybody. If the person is very reserved, it's harder, but usually I find this to be useful. And on the other side of things, you have people who want to tell you everything they didn't like about the game, right? They'll say, I didn't like this, that, this, and overall I thought the game sucked, right? They'll just say that up front. And I know as a game designer, we like these people because it's like, oh, finally, someone who tells it how it is. I can just fix everything he says and my game will be fine now or whatever, right? But beware, like, if you're not there observing them play and deducing where these problem areas are yourself through empirical observation, I generally would say not to trust people's feedback just if it's purely word of mouth, okay? And let me give an example of what I mean by this. Last week, I did a playtest session, and a guy started playing the game before I was there, so I didn't see him play the game. And when I got in there, he started telling me about how he got stuck on this section, but he was able to kind of cheat his way through it by spamming the fire button really hard to get through this enemy who was firing at him. And in my mind, I was like, I don't think that's possible because I programmed the rate of fire to only be so fast for both the player and the enemy, and the way that calculates out, it's literally not possible to do what you're describing to me. But I said, okay, can you show me the area that you had this exploit with? And sure enough, he showed me, and I had programmed in the game an indicator to show information on each area of how people were playing. And luckily I did that because I was able to easily look at the data that was saved from his playthrough and see that that is not what happened at all. That he beat it normally, okay? And there's been other times I've done playtest sessions where I'm not there and people describe a bug to me, and I try and recreate the bug and it's not there, and it ends up something else happened that made them think this other thing was a bug, right? Like it can get really complicated, and people that play for extended periods of time, they can start to blur details together. So I generally, just rule of thumb, I don't trust that feedback. Like, I'll follow up on it. I'll try to find what they're talking about. But I always make sure I can empirically observe these things happening through a video or being there in person before I make changes in the design. Alright? And kind of linked to that last point, just because one person has a problem, don't rush and make changes just to cater to that one person. It could be that they don't like puzzle games and they got stuck on a puzzle or something, right? Always make sure you test with a group of people, you have a body of information before you make those design decisions. If everyone's getting stuck on a certain part and you test it with 15, 20 people, safe to say you need to look at it again. However, if 15 people go through fine and one person gets stuck, I'd say that's probably more on them, right? So keep that in mind. Don't base your decisions off of one person's feedback. Always test with a pool of people and make decisions off of a wide range of info like that. So one last point about playtesting that I'd like to make, and this is more my own personal approach to it. I like games that don't handhold me too much. I like to experiment and figure out things for myself, and I think my games are targeting people who like to do that as well. And honestly, I think the world needs more of this. I think I'm getting a little opinionated here, but I think we've raised a culture of people that don't want to try and do things for themselves. They just want to be handheld and let mommy or the teacher do everything for me. And I really don't like that. And I think when we play test games, we have a tendency to just smooth out everything. All right. So if the player runs into any little thing they might get stuck on for a little bit, we're like, oh no, let's rush and fix that so you don't have any trouble, or like spoon feed them how to solve things, and that really takes the joy out of games. But with that being said, there's also some things that I think should be spoon fed to people. So things like, what button do I press to get through this door? for me personally, that's not an interesting challenge that I want to spend a lot of time trying to figure out or experimenting with, okay? Especially if it's on keyboard and there's a ton of different buttons I can press. I prefer to just put the button prompt on top of the player's head, okay? But maybe you're designing a game where for some reason it's a puzzle or a challenge to figure out how to get through the door, then it's different for you. So this is different for whatever game you're working on. But I try to identify what information do I want to clearly put across to the player, what's the core things they should know to play this game. I try to make sure that's pretty clear. Maybe I put a little hand-holdiness in there for people who want to skip through and not read text or just tunnel through things and don't pay attention to what they're doing. I might put a little things here and there, but for the most part, I try to not handhold. And I try to personally have a vision of what type of experience players should have while playing my game. So in my mind, I'll say, okay, I imagine this part will be challenging, this other part will be a smooth, quick, okay, I see how to do this and move on type of thing. And I try to have a very clear vision of that, and then adjust my design based off playtests to fit that vision. Okay? So I don't just fix everything because people find everything to be hard or whatever. I don't do that. That's more my personal opinion, so you can take that with like a grain of salt. Maybe you're making a game that's meant to be a crowd pleaser, so this doesn't apply to you or something, but for my games, that's how I approach things. So that's about it for my best practices for playtesting. That covers basically everything I do when I test games with people. Maybe there's some other designers watching this that have some other best practices or some good tips they'd like to add on to this. I'd love to hear them in the comments section below. That's basically it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.